Good afternoon. This is Paul Lennon, and continue my story with you. This has to be goodness, like session taping 25, I believe, at this stage of the game, and we're on chapter 11, which we call recovering. And remember, we were scrambling and surviving and all that, and remembering the sign, the Chinese sign for crisis, means end and beginning. I am a survivor. In a state of aloneness, agony, and abandon, only the will to survive was there, an instinctual drive to stay alive in a trapped and wounded animal. For some strange reason, despite all the devastation, the thought of suicide never crossed my mind. Maybe I was too depressed to even think of the effort, or I was still a believer in some sense and knew it was not uh, a recourse for me. Well, what now? How to see through the bloodshot eyes, how to ward off the waves of pain, how to lift the tombstone off my chest. I was the walking wounded, with a gaping hole in my heart and my head. But being a total wreck and having nothing to lose had its advantages. I was wonderfully free for the first time in my life. The Underground Railroad. The morning after the gunfight at the Cotija Corral, November 11th, I think, 1984, I was on a plane from Guatemala. I had not been attacked during the night. I was safe. I left Guadalajara and made for good old Mexico City. There was no sense of checking in at the School of Faith, which I had left in 1982, 2 years before. I felt out of place and had chosen not to stay in any Legion house in Mexico City. Very uncomfortable. Because of the conflict with untouchable Legion bosses, most of my Legion based social contacts would shun me, or I would simply not feel comfortable. It was mutual, so let's not blame them. I didn't want to have anything to do with the Legion as such, or things that reminded me too much of my time in the Legion. There we go. At the Benito Juarez International Airport, I went through a short list of numbers in a little brown booklet, which I have to this day. At a payphone outside, I called a faithful and safe female friend. The Spanish lady I knew through the School of Faith. Moved by her own flexibility and generosity, she unquestioningly picked me up, uh, the little guy in the Guayabera, the Mexican wedding shirt, and took me to her own home in Polanco district. I confessed my showdown and was glad to see she was not scandalized. I holed up there for a while like a knocked out prize fighter recovering in the quiet of the dressing room. Actually, this was the person who had kept me updated on the saga of my confreres exiled in Gabon. A few days later, from her home, I called Father Acevedo, the provincial who had done the Easter candle trick on me, and I asked to talk to Father Maciel. Although my allegiance with him and the Legion was shot, as a gentleman I felt obligated to apologize for my angry outburst and disrespectful conduct. The territorial director, former fellow novice, who had tricked me and forced me to the missions 2 years earlier, told me he didn't know where Father Maciel was. I'll leave that to your consideration. I refused to tell Father Provincial where I was staying, and this was perhaps my first clear-headed act of formal disobedience, or even assertiveness, in my 23 years in the Legion. I wonder what might have happened had I been able to meet with Father Maciel, or if Father Acevedo had appealed to my noble spirit or acted with more tact. For example, Father Paul, would you like to come in and discuss what happened? No strings attached. It was not to be. And this kind of tactful behavior I was to learn in the good old United States of America. When full of angst, I approached the Lozano family in Tlalpan to tell them I had a run-in with Father Maciel, again sheepishly and with some shame and guilt. They were rather bemused by the whole thing. And I remember the daughter uh, crying out, uh, Mommy, Pablito had a fight with Father Maciel. Why don't we help him to go home to Ireland to see his mother? Good old Mexican hospitality. Oh, out came the checkbooks. I remember one, the daughter took out a checkbook, $500. The mother followed suit, $500. And there was my fare to travel to Ireland if I needed to. As soon as I felt strong enough, I said goodbye to those few generous and hospitable remaining friends in Mexico City and took off for the lost worlds of Quintana Roo. Part of my fledgling and confused recovery plan was to return to the familiarity and relative freedom of the missions and to pick up the pieces from the previous 2 years' work. Kind of like, I would call this like tying up some loose ends. And that's the way I operate because of the way I'm made. Other people do it differently, but I kind of go around and I close circles. It's just my way of doing things. It's part of my personality type. Whatever belongings surviving my life in the Legion were there, with a strict vow of poverty, that would not be much. So it's kind of like picking up also closing the circle of the Legion to some degree. There might be another part which I had to do, but closing down the whole shebang. Some of my books, perhaps, those books by Father Powell would have made it. I don't know, they made it out of, no. Yeah, I might have brought them to the missions, or I might have had to scoot back to the School of Faith. I don't remember. Well, I picked up some of my books by Father Powell, my little treasure. A feeling of relief came from losing all fear, and the loss of fear came from having nothing to lose. I just went back to Quintana Roo without asking permission from anybody. I sensed that now that I was taking my destiny into my own hands and that they would not intervene. And they did not. It was strange. As a legionary, one is afraid of the superiors checking up on you all the time. But now psychologically, I was out. And then I had no fear. My paranoia was decreased, not gone. And so I felt free about going back and maybe going to some of the houses and just walking in and grabbing my things, or maybe being able to say goodbye to some of the families in Chetumal, or not sure if I was able to say goodbye to my parishioners in La Divina Providencia. Maybe I did. It was a weird feeling. When I got there, I took the car I had been using before my split with the Legion. It was a Jeep, and went back and forth about my business. I had never done that before, at least not to that degree. I was giving myself time to say goodbye to the Legion my way. Though I can't remember whether I actually did formally bid farewell to legionary confreres because I may have been still suspicious of them. I said adios only to my closest lay friends. Why trouble the ordinary faithful with my personal problems? When I wrote this, I had discovered that little guy that sings through his nose. Forgive me, and Nobel Prize winner later on. Princess on the steeple and all the pretty people, they're drinking, thinking that they got it made, and changing all kinds of precious gifts and things. But you'd better take your diamond ring. You'd better pawn it, babe. You used to be so amused at Napoleon and rags and the language that he used. Go to him now. He calls you. You can't refuse. When you got nothing to lose. You're invisible now. You got no secrets to conceal. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people know, the chorus to this little song. How does it feel? How does it feel now to be on your own with no direction home, like a complete unknown, like a rolling stone? And that's enough for today. Hey, but the Rolling Stone is happy for some reason. He's free. There's no muss sticking to him any longer. Take it easy. He's not in anybody's garden, that Rolling Stone. No, left the garden. He's free. Not trapped.